Hello and welcome everyone in another episode of Research and Celebrity. Today we have fortune to speak with Dr. Mitasha Bhardwaj. A brief introduction of Dr. Mitasha. She has done her bachelor's and master's in an integrated course from MIT University, Noida in biotechnology, and then joined ICGV as a JRF, Junior Research Fellow. And then for her PhD, she moved to ETH Zurich, where she did her PhD in biophysics. For postdoc, she moved to the Netherlands at Technical University, and currently she is a patent expert. So starting from molecular biologist to intellectual property protection, we are going to have a great conversation with Dr. Mitasha. And let's start. Thank you, Dr. Mitasha, for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you so much. And you can call me Mitasha. That's okay. I mean, again, being humble again. I mean, I would like to keep it Mitasha.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, it's my pleasure to tell you about my journey because it has been very unconventional journey. And I think it's very unique as well. I have never met anyone with this profile or background. And when you were saying this, I was like, oh my God, all of this in one life? Yes, that's me. So you have an example. There are people who are always studying, and, and I'm one of those. Yeah.
Great. So we always start our conversation with the traditional question that how and when you decided that you want to become a researcher.
I think this is a quality which is inbuilt in some certain people. I mean, they want to ask questions. So I was an inquisitive child, as my mom would say, always asking questions. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? I had a collection of fun facts. So I mean, I think early on in my childhood, I had some traits in me that I was questioning why, and I think that's the spirit which kept me going forward in my research endeavors up until my postdoc, and even now when I have a patent application, I ask the question, why? Why did you do this? What was the motivation? Why was the need? Why there is there a need of it? What's behind that? What is the status quo? So I think that very question, why? So I wouldn't say I decided. It was just that I was like that by by birth. I don't know if I may say that innately.
It sounds like it was inherent, as you mentioned, and I
Yeah.
think that this is the inbuilt quality. We had a researcher celebrity conversations all over the time. One thing which comes often is like inquisitive child, this asking why it is happening, ends up being researchers most of the time. We can start with that. So,
Yeah.
uh, first thing we'll start that when you did your bachelor's and master's, in the first question, like what were the thoughts when you decided that you really want to do a PhD after tasting the research for a year already?
Okay. So there are so many questions in this one question, actually. So when I started my life as a when I joined the BTech biotechnology course in Amity, since I always wanted to look further, look beyond. I was one of those students who did lots of internships. So my first research experience was within the first year of my training as a biotech student, and I worked in a couple of those internships. One of them was in NICD, which is National Institute of Communicable Disease. I think it's called something else now. So I'm talking about, I don't know, 20 years ago or something. Yes, I am old. So yeah, I mean, when I was doing that in that particular research, when I was working with communicable diseases, that's when I felt, there are lots of problems, lots of issues where human lives are affected, and I wanted to be close to that, contribute with my efforts, whether it are scientific efforts or like just physical efforts, for a greater good in the health sector. So that was clear. I wouldn't say I decided for PhD from day one. Actually, I have a funny story which led me to decide to do a PhD. But that also speaks of my character. I mean, I never decide big. I never look big. Think, okay, this is the goal, cool. But I would just break it down into smaller steps and smaller milestones. This is what I want to achieve. And how should I go forward with it? I'm not thinking about PhD when I'm doing my master's. I think I definitely did not think about it. At that moment, everything was open because for my master's, one of my internships during my master's, I worked in Fortis Hospital. So again, I was always working with hospitals, researchers, a combination going forward. And when I joined as a junior research fellow in ICGB, it was for malaria vaccine. I was really driven again from my project in NICD that there's lots of gap. Okay, vaccine is needed. There are certain diseases which are endemic to these locations, the tropical countries. They're not in other countries. What do they do differently? What do they have different? So I was always, asking these questions. And what are the research initiatives in that zone? So neglected tropical diseases has been my area of interest all throughout, starting from tuberculosis and malaria when they were still in the neglected zone back then. And now I'm not anymore. So thanks to the research efforts being made. So I'm taking some time to come to why I decided for a PhD, because at that moment I had not decided I would go for a PhD. It was during my GRF training program, I felt, and that's why I'm saying it's funny, that other students, other GRFs who were potential or prospect PhD candidates in the same institute are going to get a degree. They go to get to these seminars. On the contrary, I stay here in the bench making reagents for them on for our research project. So while research drives me, it's kind of controlling me that I cannot attend these seminars because I don't have time. I do not have bandwidth. So if I say I'm taking this seminar for my PhD or to add, credit points to my PhD, my supervisor would be happy to let me go and attend it, and rather would actually pay to go for international conferences. So I said, okay, now, you know what? I have to do PhD. I want to do PhD because these people are going to become my bosses one day, and I would be just working for them and never become their boss. So that's what I'm saying. It's a funny story. But it was more like, okay, let's do it because research is what I like. And I never took PhD as another education endeavor. And I think thanks to my experience, that GRF experience, I really felt more confident. I was not a fresh graduate. I felt more confident in my handling because I would be running 15, 20 gels in a week or something. So I had confidence. So I think that made me a happier PhD candidate. And if I'm not just I'm not boasting, but yes, I'm also a successful one because I could back up my results saying that, I know what I did. The basic silly mistakes a early researcher would make, an early PhD student would make, I had already made them as a GRF. So I didn't repeat them and I learned from it. So I think that made my time as a PhD student more interesting and more successful.
Absolutely. And I think this is something which I would like to tell all the audience here, that if you get the chance to do any internships, as Mitasha has mentioned about, that she has done a lot of internships. So if you get the opportunity, always grab them. If you don't, try to build them. And at the least, before committing to PhD, at least prepare yourself with the confidence it takes, because now we'll go to the second question about that. How was the PhD ride? So giving all the preparation you have done and the exposure you already received as a junior research fellow, you have touched upon the tip of the iceberg, that how you felt confident, how you were like, okay, now I'll be a better candidate for PhD. Your initial training, how well it trained you for PhD, and then how was that ride in the Netherlands?
Uh, yeah, so it trained me well. Like I said, I could make statements and they were backed up by facts and information and then real experimental data, not saying that I did this and this happened. So what? I'm not, as a PhD student, is not there to report a result. It's called results and observations for a reason. So you report a result and say your observation, and then you make some conclusions based on that. If I would go to my PhD office, supervisor, and say, this was yellow, they was like, why is it yellow and what is the significance? I think that's what it takes to be a successful PhD candidate. And I think I already had that in me thanks to the trainings I did previously. So that really helped me. And especially in building up the confidence. Even if I could say that I don't know, I could say those things confidently without shying away, because yes, I'm allowed to say I don't know if I don't know something. So I would just go to my professor and say, I don't know this. And say, did you consider that? No, I did not. And he would just say, why not? Because I did not think about it. I was thinking about this direction and not that direction. And even when he would say, do this, I would say, why should I do that and not that? Why is my idea not good? And perhaps, and it's not there for the sake of argument. It is there to understand why my line of experimentation not better than your suggested line of experimentation. And often we would just combine the two, come up with this whole story. To an extent, when I think it was my second year or third year, I don't remember now, we did a placeholder figures in a publication, because we knew, okay, we're going to do this will lead to that. Based on that, we have these two outcomes, we'll go forward. So entire figures of the paper were pre-done even before the research was done. So like a placeholders, what's the legend is going to say, like, and based on the conclusion, it was really interesting that that confidence, that build up on your research, that basically helps you even write a grant proposal to to generate funds. Because, and I was actively involved in writing research proposals, grant proposals. I was not just doing, sorry for my language, like this, working in the lab, like I don't know what's happening around me. I was doing different things. I was raising funds, I was writing grants, I was organizing events, because I could talk to different professors coming from different countries and I didn't have any apprehensions whatsoever. So again, the confidence, because if they would ask me something, I would say, I don't know. I had confidence of saying, I don't know. I think that was very important learning for me personally. And my PhD in Switzerland, as I've said, it was a joyride. I'm one of those PhD students who would say, and they're only lucky few ones, would say I would repeat my PhD with the same professor given a chance. Actually, I would go back to him any day if he tells me almost every month, come back. And I'm like, now I've just ventured into something else. But yes, I would have gone back to him. It's all because the environment he created, the situation he created, the independence I have to, in my work. And then I was not treated as just like a student. I mean, my words had some value. It's one of the quotes he makes all the time, that it's your PhD. You have more expertise in it, more than even me. And it gives, it's such a simple thing, but the confidence it gives you is like, wow, yes, it's my subject. He knows 10 things superficially. I know this one in depth. And no one can touch me on my subject. I mean, that confidence. And then even like, it has its perils in the sense that you can tell him that you don't know this. I read it here, because you know it, you literally know more and better. So, I mean, it also comes with the cost that he might not be able to, guide you specifically. And I think PhD is not for like goading. It is for guidance. It is for having good discussions. If a PhD supervisor is writing to you what your next experiment should be, I think personally, and very personally, you're not doing a great job, because this person will get so used to being goaded, being told what to do, micromanage, and maybe not think, not able to grow as a scientist. So again, it's a very personal thing to say. I mean, maybe some people like it, good for them, but I definitely benefited from the independence I had.
Absolutely. And I think this is something I also want to vouch for, that first, there are not many PhD students, at least majority of them, who can say that they will do it all over again and with the same PI. So yes, you are here in that case. And another thing which I would like to say, all the audience here who are listening to this, that as Mitasha mentioned, this is the truth of every PhD student, that when you start as a PhD student, you probably start exploring the subject, the topic, or the research question. But by the end of it, you are the one who's expert. And probably, as Mitasha mentioned, your PI might or might not be at par than you, because what you have studied, you already have educated him or her during that process. So you are at the Excel part by the end of your PhD. Now, because you said so many good things about your mentor, I would like to ask your suggestion and guidance for the future generation, that what are the things they should like be 100% sure before committing to a PhD, either to a mentor or to a program.
I mean, it's true for not just PhD, it's like for any other thing in life. I love the probation period. I'm a big advocate of it. And we often take it as a probation, as like the employee is being judged by the employer, or in this case, a PhD supervisor is going to judge you for your capabilities and potential. It's also the opposite. This is your time period to judge them, to see whether you fit yourself. You see yourself fitting in that laboratory, in that office space, in that workspace. Maybe your professor is amazing, but the person you're working next door, I mean, sitting next to you is really not a kind person, or you do not gel along, or for whatever reason, maybe you are an obnoxious person to work with. I mean, I would never rule out that. I can be difficult to digest for others as well. Why should you say that you should be, I mean, you are the best? No, that's not the case. So either ways, it is the fit. I mean, it's a 4 year or more commitment. If you're not happy, no one is going to be happy. So this may sound very philosophical, but at the end of the day, your happiness matters. For me, it matters even now today how my Monday and Friday are going, because my Saturday, Sunday, I mean, at least here in abroad, we have those 2 days to ourselves for the family. It basically decides the fate of my weekend. So my personal life is majorly affected by my professional life. And if I'm not happy, if I'm sulking for whatever reason, which could be for simple administrative issues, or something more big issues of not getting along, or I don't know, there can be many things when you're doing a PhD degree or any other employment. So it really affects. And at the end of the day, I mean, one thing which COVID taught us all is life is short and it is so unpredictable. So enjoy it. Enjoy, even if it is for 6 months of a probation period. Try and see the positives. Make your pros cons list. I mean, I always, I'm a big fan of pros and cons list. Do your SWOT analysis. All these things which we learned in our education were not for that those marks. They can be applied for. I did SWOT analysis for even before moving countries. This is my fourth country. Yes, this is my fourth country. It took me some time to realize. Yeah, and I always do SWOT analysis before moving. I mean, whether it makes sense, whether I should take this big step or not. So I mean, those are the things one should consider the probation period. During the probation period, understand what is important, and then go forward. There could be many reasons for not continuing the PhD, and which has nothing to do with the researcher, the employer, or the subject. These are some very soft situations. I mean, I don't know how to say them more detailed, in a more detailed fashion, but perhaps you get it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different. It is a commitment. It is a 4 year or more commitment. Don't take it lightly at all. And I mean, you can always change PhD, but once you have started in the subject, thinking that now I've started, then it feels like it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to give the analogy of marriage and divorce. That's what people say often. But then think carefully. Think it's very important.
No, absolutely. And I think this is something which we at Empowering Sense Foundation always believe in, that breaking the barrier that what have been seen, and this is true for India and also globally, that the amount of PhD students dropping out is increasing just because they are realizing that they are not happy. And part of the problem is, as you mentioned, that there was not, this probation period was missing. I am a firm advocate for saying that there should be no walk-in PhDs. There should always be like, okay, you like my research, you like my group, let's stay together for weeks or months until we are on the same page. We can talk in the same language. Because what happened, as you mentioned, most of the time is like people commit at the start, and within weeks or months or years, they figure out that either the lab environment or the conversation with your advisor or with your peers is not going through. And now you are in this dilemma that should I give up or not? Because I already have spent so much of time. After spending 2, 3, 4 years, it is tough to let everything go. And this is what makes it more challenging at times to say bye at that time. And in worst case scenarios, people commit the suicides, which is the toughest part. And one of the part having these celebrity conversations here, that here we celebrate research. So you really are passionate and dedicated to do research, but little things like soft skills, like talking, transparency, enjoying your Mondays and Fridays, as you mentioned, that we always say that do whatever makes you happy. If research is one of them, sure.
Yeah.
But then it needs more than passion and dedication, the way you navigate your situations. So you said your PhD was great. You can go anytime to the supervisor again. Now, from there to the postdoctoral training and then to the entrepreneur route, if you can share that journey.
Yeah, so I had a very interesting turn of events. So when we would have these deep conversations. I mean, like I said, I was very close to my PhD supervisors. And then I told him, my grandmother keeps on asking me what your research is going to lead to. I mean, what are you doing? And I'm doing a basic biology research. I mean, not speaking bad of it, but then I want something more applied. I mean, and he knew that I was always drawn to neglected tropical diseases and stuff, and like endeavors in more like in a medicine way. It has something to do with all the conversations we had in a couple of years. So then there was this professor from TU Delft who walked into Basel in Switzerland to give a talk. And he spoke at the end of his biophysics professor. He said, in the end, we can use biophysics for diagnostics. That's it. Left it there. After that, over the drinks, again, I had drinks with the professor. I said, I'm intrigued by the last slide. I want to know more. What is in your head? And then he was like, if you're interested, come over and let's discuss. So I went to Netherlands. I discussed with him. I really liked the project. We were using CRISPR-Cas, which was used at that moment, thought to be used for sequencing and then those applications only. So how about using it specifically for diagnostics and making a point of care test? And there in those conversations we aligned of using such technology for neglected tropical diseases. So completely different from what I had ever done. I mean, I was like, oh yes, I'm all game. Let's do it. There was a PhD student already on the project. I just joined the project. I even went to Kenya and Uganda to East Africa to gauge the extent of the diagnostic gaps, why these diseases are prevalent. So it was completely different study from what I was used to. Now I was doing surveys and I was doing like data collection, understanding, and then customer mapping in the sense of the field workers who would be using these states. So what are their requirements? It was completely different. It was like a MBA from a customer perspective. But I was really excited about it because this was something which I was doing again out of passion and out of curiosity and out of interest. So I did that. It went on fine. Towards the end, we had Corona. And then we were like, okay, then access to patient sample was really difficult. And the professor suggested that if I really want, and we had already filed for the patent for the application. I'm a strong advocate of IP. That's why I'm in this profession as well. So we had already filed for the patent application within the umbrella of university, of course. And my professor said, if you want to take it forward, I would not hold you back. I mean, take it and commercialize it because that's what your end goal is. And maybe work with Doctors Without Borders or NGOs or, WHO, those projects. So those were the customers I was interested in partnering with, GSK, the big companies, small companies. But the whole focus was at that time on Corona. So this was a second wave now. So first wave, that's when the project had to be halted. We could not test it further. So our test exists. We could not test it with urine samples or visceral leishmaniasis. That's what you were interested in. I'm now going to use the entrepreneurial language. So we pivoted to different use cases. And because it was just a direct DNA detection, we could use different diagnostics for different infectious disease or even non-infectious in that case. But my idea, again, not deviating from what I would just initially decided it for. So STIs was something I was interested in. So I further developed this test for sexually transmitted infections. And that's when we were talking to different players. But then this was the second wave of Corona. And we realized the CRISPR-Cas experts, you mentioned Nobel Prize winners, Jennifer Doudna, their lab had also ventured into diagnostics. And they were making a CRISPR-Cas test for Corona diagnostics. And we were like, oh my God, we can no way compete with them. So we had again problem at two fronts. Number one, with respect to the price, because which was for the other commercially available tests for neglected tropical disease diagnostics. Those were, we were talking in the range of, like cents and pence. So it was really less, not even a euro or a pound. So we were in that range. So it was difficult because CRISPR-Cas tests would be costly. So why should someone take it into a costlier test? The technology is great, cool, but we could not develop it further. And secondly, we could not compete with the CRISPR-Cas experts, who have ventured into diagnostics. So again, based on the facts, my always decision making has been based on the facts. So we cannot compete. There is no way. Why did we start this project? We started this project so the technology can be used for neglected tropical diseases. If I do not continue this company and abandon my patent, can the technology still be used? Answer is yes, because these companies, other companies in developing world, if they really want to use the technology, then they can use it without fearing to license it. So that's exactly what I did. I abandoned my patent. I went to the firm. See, you know what? This is the reason why I'm abandoning it. They don't care, but then at least I felt that I should give them a reason because they worked into it. And I really felt that their efforts were a lot. And then said, what now, Mitasha? What now? What are you going to do now? I said, I've not decided, but let's see. And this was like post-corona. I was just trying to understand. And then they said, would you like to consider this profession? You tend to understand this better than our other clients. So I was like, okay, I can give it a shot. It always interested me. And looking back, I mean, I always say there's always a reason why you do things. So education never get wasted.
Yeah, never.
During my PhD, I had 3 electives. All of them were on IP because
nice.
I had to choose something outside the subject matter. In fact, my PhD supervisor encouraged me to do all the electives outside my subject matter. He was like, you are anyways learning what you're learning. Why do you want to do a biotech elective? I mean,
Sure.
Don't do that. Do something outside. Do something completely different. So yeah, my PhD, I had 3 electives. During my BTech, Biotech, I did 2 WIPO course. I also had IP during my BTech course as an elective. So in now looking back in retrospect, I'm like, it was meant to be where I am today. And then like I said, I was there in Netherlands. I stayed there for a year, but then due to family reasons, my family moved to England. So then I found an opportunity here in England as well. Again, surprisingly enough, when I was in Netherlands, I did, because I was new to the profession, I wanted to do a course in English. So I did a UK qualification to see if I fit or not. I managed to pass it. So I'm part qualified UK patent attorney. Although I started my work in Europe. So now I'm aspiring to be both European and UK patent attorney. Yeah. So I'm part of my training.
So people do talk about like how these dots connects and take you where you want to be. You just gave us the perfect examples. It was always somewhere in back of your mind where you were driven to, and now you are almost at the destination, if it is not the destination, because who knows from here where you will be. But one thing which never changes is this inquisitiveness, that you are ready to sacrifice the amount of research you have done for a better good. As you mentioned, like abandoning a patent is not an easy thing. And I think for the people who already have them in under their name, they're like, it is impossible to do that. But when you took this courageous step, it also shows that the character, the confidence you have in you, that, okay, if I know something, I know how to handle it. I know how to develop it into either a kit or into even a company. I would like to know your thoughts for the PhD students, because now this is coming up in India, that PhD students are coming up with the idea of companies. Okay. And some of them are very successful, doing great. So if you can share that experience, that how they should prepare themselves better in a way where they can ensure or at least to go somewhere near the success.
I can write a book on it. And I'm sure your chapter somewhere is coming up because I am writing few things down. But one thing I was like, don't think. Take the leap of faith. Just go ahead. Maximum. Worst come worst, it fails. Okay, at least you tried. But try wholeheartedly. Don't have a half-hearted attempt, that because that then it is, it is started to fail. it was from the start, it was, bound to fail because you didn't put in 100% effort. But start something, put in 100%, don't think twice. Don't think about it any time in your career that it is too late or it's too early. I need to know, because there'll never be a good time. And the same advice can be used for very different scenarios in life, in personal life. And I think it holds. I mean, whether it is having a child, whether it is to get married, sometimes you really have to take a leap of faith and say, you know what, I'm going to do it. And my favorite line, which I say it all the time, people quote me from my interviews, that I say, I have to do it to know it. And if I've not done it, I don't know it. So I'm sorry. If somebody tells me, do you think this has some chance? I said, I have to do it to know it. I'm a scientist. It has to be backed up with the information. Right? And if somebody asks me whether this patent application will be successful or not, we have to try it. But if all the elements are in it, and if you have, drafted it nicely, you're taking it forward, you're prosecuting it nicely, examiner is there to grant it. They're your friend, like the same way reviewers are to publish your paper. I mean, they have not, I mean, editor wants to publish their paper. It's in their interest. They don't want to lose on it. I mean, but if your science is good, it will definitely get published, right? So you don't have to say that he's my enemy. No one is your enemy. Come on, don't think like that. Take the leap of faith, go forward, try it, because if you have not tried, you would not know what it would have been. I mean, in the end, it just turns out to be, I don't know, mini MBA. That's what I've done.
Nice. So the intense amount of positivity, which I can see, is probably a trademark for most of the researchers, but still there are researchers who, snuggle into so many different silos. You said that you have to do it to know it, okay? With this is the philosophy which you work with. For the person who's going through a tough time, either a PhD student or a postdoc or early career fellow, at any stage of the research they are, what you will suggest to come out of that?
I mean, it's a tough one. And everyone has their own way of dealing with the stressful times. But I personally, I mean, what I practice, yes, I allow myself to solve. If simple as that, if an experiment has failed, which I was preparing for days, I would take some time to mourn over it. Yes, I would sit down with my book, holding my head, and like, what did I do wrong? Going through all the data, all the reagents, everything all over again. So don't just brush it under the carpet, moan over it, discuss it with yourself. You don't have to discuss it with anyone, and at least be truthful to yourself. If by mistake you're not sure, or if there's some uncertainty, did I pick up 5% glucose or 3% glucose? Tell yourself the truth. You don't have to answer it to anyone, but at least you should know the truth. Brushing under the carpet and not acknowledging there's an issue is the biggest problem. Mm-hmm. Once you have accomplished that, said, okay, well, what this happened, going forward, what I have to do, break again it into sub-steps. I'm going to remake my reagents. I'm going to restart. I'm going to thaw the fresh cell lines. I don't know. I'm just making it up. But then have baby steps. And I will write and document everything to be able to trace back. And even then, it doesn't lead to the hypothesis I was hoping for, or the result I was hoping for. It doesn't prove the hypothesis. Then this is the new hypothesis. I have come to a conclusion that having 3% of glucose leads to this and this observation. And that's exactly what you're doing. I mean, that's the exciting thing about science. No one has ever proven it. I mean, that's so cool. I'm the first one to say that such and such, protein expression happens when you have such and such reagents arrangement. Isn't that great? And then get excited about it, build it up, do it again and again to be 100% sure. Maybe it was by chance the first time. Have enough data, go with that information and make it exciting story to narrate. I mean, there's no harm in it. But then either, brushing it under the carpet that it has not happened, or going to your supervisor that I don't know what to do. He's not there to tell you what to do. It's your PhD. I mean, people would hate me for saying that, but then come on, it's for you to break it down, because he was not sitting right next to you, or she was not sitting right next to you when you were doing these experiments, or sitting in your head, because PhD is not what is happening when you're sitting at the bench. I slept, walked, washed, bathed PhD all the time. I would have best of experimental ideas during shower. And then sometimes I would just have to write this down somewhere, but I don't have a paper to write it down. I mean, it may sound silly and again philosophical, but that's how it is. I mean, at least be truthful to yourself. Your notebooks, you can be truthful. I am a big fan of documenting. I write everything possible. So, I mean, I would just write it down, and next time I know I did this different, and maybe it opens up. Maybe someone else has found similar thing, and have discussions. Have discussions with your peers. All of us are in the same boat or have been in the same boat. Don't feel that saying that you have failed makes gets you down, or makes you any bad. I mean, it makes you better because you have learned a way of it not working and the other person has not. So you have to build up on your failures. I mean, each one of them, I build up on my failed company. I can sit and cry about it like my company failed, but no, it gave me a mini MBA. I can talk so confidently in front of you because I know I tried it. I'm not making this up. I have not read it in a book, a self-help book, or in a TED show. These are my own words. These are my own experiences. So if I would have not failed, I wouldn't be making these statements. And the positivity, I mean, I think I've failed enough number of times that I don't know that I don't have a choice but to get up. So at least that, I mean, it would be a lie if I would say I've never failed. Oh, I have failed.
No, I
Don't get
think
me started on it
exactly.
either.
This is, I think, the way they say that if life gives you lemons, what you do is like make a lemonade out of it. And that is the way how I think researchers should work and also live their life with. So it is such a great conversation that I have to keep an eye on the timing. So keeping the timeline in the mind, I would like to know the word of wisdom from you for the researchers now. And because I can see the positivity can kill people, I'm sure that it is not a conventional statement, but being too optimistic as a researcher, being too positive, like you, the good part which you mentioned is like always acknowledge your failures, always take the responsibility for what you have done, write it down as explicit as you can, especially for the experiments which fail, because when everything is working you are not worried about it, whatever the
Right.
way it is working. But if you are missing a very tiny details and everything is working, then what, how it troubles the other researcher is they are going to follow your paper. If a tiniest detail is missing, they will break their head, their resources, their time, everything will go waste because you missed that tiny thing there. So, on this, what will be your word of wisdom to the audience?
I don't know. I think I've said a lot. But again, I mean, I don't know. It's never too late. Don't think too much. Ask questions. It's not, no question is silly. And I mean, if when you mention, I mean, if something has not worked, if I was working on someone's work, some experiment, and it is not working, don't feel afraid. Lift up the phone, call this person, and say, you know what, I was trying, and this has not worked. Maybe this person has moved on to another university. Type them an email that I'm trying to do this. I receive random emails from my PhD work still. What conditions were you using? And I still answer them, and I'm happy to answer them. And sometimes I say, you know what, this didn't work for me. So, just for you to know, I tried, because the person is saying, I'm trying to do this. What are your thoughts? And I said, this didn't work for me, but maybe you can try it. So I even save to save them some time and maybe some fact again that it might be the case that it would not work because it has not worked with someone else as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, even now, I mean, for small things, big things, I would say just ask questions,
Mhm.
whether it's his peers, whether it is strangers. I've not met many of the collaborators or whatever the conversations I've had, but that's okay. Max, they will say she's stupid. Okay, I'm stupid, I'm fine, but I'm stupid and curious.
Yes. That is what is driving all of us. And I'll say to all the audience here that if you want to write to Mitasha, you can write to her. And we at Empowering Sense Foundation is working towards building this network where you are not afraid of asking anything, because as Mitasha said, there is nothing called stupid question. Answers can be stupid, but questions can never be. So if you want to write to her, if you want Empowering Sense Foundation to help you to connect with our researcher celebrities, we are there to help you. But one thing which we want from you is do whatever makes you happy. If research happens to be that thing, we are all in here to serve you for that. With this, we'll say thank you so much, Mitasha, for this, I will say, vibrant conversation, which I'm sure will help so many of the researchers for next generation, and even people from the older generations can learn a lot from this conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me this platform to rant about myself and my life. I mean, you call it vibrant. I don't know. Somebody would say, where was she thinking? What was she thinking? She did so many things. But yeah,
No, it was
thank you.
pleasure having you at the platform. For the
Thank you.
audience, we'll say stay tuned for another episode of Researcher Celebrity.